The alarm tore through the ship before I even opened my eyes, and I knew before I moved that something had gone terribly wrong. Red light washed over the sleeping quarters. My husband, Daniel, was already sitting up, his hand on my shoulder, his voice low and steady in a way that made my hearts beat even faster. "Get up, Nira, now. That is not a drill siren." I had heard that siren only once before, during a training exercise years ago. This was not training. The floor shuddered beneath us, as something struck the outer hull. I am a fleet commander of the Valithi, a species known across the Alliance for our precision, our calm, our mastery of strategy built over 10,000 years of civilization. My husband is human. Our marriage was never something I chose. It was arranged after my homeworld lost a war we should have won, a punishment dressed up as diplomacy, a way for the Alliance Council to remind my people that we were no longer untouchable. For 3 years, I had endured the quiet stares of my colleagues when Daniel walked beside me at formal gatherings. Humans were new to galactic society, seen as short-lived, fragile, prone to violence, lacking the refinement our culture prized. I told myself I had accepted my fate. Privately, I was ashamed. I had built a career on discipline and intellect, and my reward was a husband my own people pitied me for. Now the ship rocked again, harder this time, and the lights flickered. "Pirates," Daniel said, pulling on his boots without hurry, as if his hearts were not hammering the way mine were. "Raiders. Has to be. No Alliance patrol would fire without a warning broadcast." I activated my wrist display. The bridge channel was already screaming with panic. Captain Solon, my commanding officer, was shouting orders that contradicted each other. Half the crew was frozen at their stations. We had never faced a live raider assault before, not like this, not with our shields already failing. "Stay here," I told Daniel, reaching for my uniform. He looked at me, and there was no fear in his eyes, only a strange, sharp focus I had never seen on him before. "No," he said, "you are going to need me." I wanted to argue. I did not have time to argue. We ran through the corridors together, alarms wailing, crew members rushing past us with wide eyes and no direction. When we reached the bridge, the scene was worse than I feared. Captain Solon stood frozen at the tactical display, staring at 3 raider vessels closing in on our position, our shields down to 20%, our weapons offline from the first strike. "They knew our patrol route," Solon said, his voice shaking. "They knew exactly when our defenses would be weakest." "Then we adapt," I said, stepping to the secondary console, but even as I said it, I felt the hollow truth of it. Our tactics were built on symmetry, on fair engagement, on doctrines written by minds that had never truly known desperation. Everything in our training assumed the enemy would follow the same rules we did. Daniel moved past me without asking permission, scanning the tactical display with an intensity that startled the bridge crew. "Your weapons are down, but your engines are not," he said. "And you have 3 shuttle bays still sealed." "What does that matter?" Solon snapped. "We cannot outrun raiders in shuttles." "You are not going to run," Daniel said. "You are going to make them think you already lost." I stared at him. "Explain, quickly." He pointed at the display, tracing the raider formation with his finger. "They are circling because they expect resistance. Predictable, disciplined resistance. Cut all non-essential power. Kill the exterior lights. Vent atmosphere from 2 empty cargo bays, so their sensors read hull breaches. Make them believe we are already dead in the water." "That is deception," Solon said, his tone somewhere between disbelief and disgust. "Our protocols do not include false surrender signals." "Your protocols were not written for this," Daniel said. "Mine were." I remembered then, in a rush, something Daniel had told me once during a quiet night I had barely listened to. He came from a world with a history soaked in centuries of conflict, where humans had learned, over and over, that survival sometimes meant refusing to fight fair. I had thought of it as proof of human savagery. In that moment, staring at the tactical display, I understood it differently. It was proof of human ingenuity, born from necessity. "Do it," I said. Solon turned to me, furious. "Nira, this is not your authority to grant." "Then use your authority to save this ship, Captain, or step aside and let me use mine." For one long second, Solon said nothing. Then he turned to the crew and gave the order. The lights died. The hum of the engines dropped to a whisper. Somewhere below us, atmosphere vented from 2 sealed cargo bays, creating a bright, deceptive bloom on any sensor watching from outside. Daniel guided 2 junior officers through rerouting emergency power to a single hidden weapons battery, one the raiders would not expect, because our own tactical manuals rarely used it. "Now we wait," Daniel said, crouching beside the console, his eyes fixed on the display. Waiting had never felt so unbearable. I stood beside my husband, watching the 3 raider ships slow their advance, their scanners no doubt reading our ship as crippled, drifting, harmless. "They are moving in for boarding," Daniel murmured. "Standard raider behavior. They want the cargo, not a fight." "How do you know that?" "Because taking a fight costs them resources. Predators do not waste energy on prey that already looks dead." The lead raider ship drew closer, its docking clamps extending toward our hull. My heart's pounded so hard I feared everyone on the bridge could hear it. "Now," Daniel said quietly. I gave the order. The hidden weapons battery came online in a burst of light, striking the docking clamps before they could lock, tearing through the raider's exposed underside, where its own shields were weakest from targeting our hull. The explosion lit up the viewport, and for one breathless moment, the bridge crew stared in stunned silence. The second raider ship broke formation immediately, firing wildly, confused by a supposedly dead ship suddenly striking back. Daniel called out coordinates, guiding our gunners toward the raider's weapon systems instead of its hull, disabling rather than destroying, because a crippled enemy still drifting nearby could be captured, could be questioned, could tell us who sent them. The third ship, seeing its companions fall, turned and fled into the dark. The bridge erupted into stunned, disbelieving cheers. Captain Solon sank into his chair, breathing hard, staring at Daniel as if seeing him for the first time. "How," Solon said, "did a civilian know battle tactics like that?" Daniel straightened, and for the first time since the alarm had sounded, I saw exhaustion cross his face, quiet and human and real. "I grew up in a world where the strong did not always win," he said. "Sometimes the ones who survived were the ones willing to do what their enemies never expected. I never wanted to use that here. I hoped I would never have to." The bridge fell quiet. I watched my colleagues, the same people who had mocked me for years, who had called my marriage a punishment, who had looked at my husband with barely hidden pity. Not one of them said a word. Not one of them dared to. Later, after the medical teams confirmed no casualties, after the captured raider vessel was secured and towed for interrogation, after the adrenaline in my body finally began to fade, I found Daniel alone in the observation deck, staring out at the stars. I stood beside him for a long moment before speaking. "I owe you an apology," I said quietly. He turned to look at me, surprised. "For what?" "For 3 years, I let myself believe I was given a burden. I let my people's opinions become my own. I never once considered that everything they saw as weakness in you might be exactly what saved us today." Daniel was quiet for a moment, his eyes soft in the low light of the deck. "You were not wrong to feel that way," he said. "Your people built something incredible, Nira. Peace, order, 10,000 years of stability. My people never had that luxury. We learned to survive in the gaps other species never had to face. That does not make either of us better. It just means we needed each other today." I felt something loosen in my chest, something I had been holding tightly for years without realizing it. The council will want a full report, I said. They will ask how a fleet commander of the Velithi allowed a civilian to direct battle strategy on her bridge. What will you tell them? I smiled, and it felt like the first honest smile I had given in a long time. I will tell them the truth, that my husband, the one they pitied me for marrying, saved this ship, and everyone on it. And I will tell them that if they wish to mock me for it again, they are welcome to explain to the council why they would rather have lost that battle with pride than won it with humility. Daniel laughed softly, and the sound settled something deep and warm inside me. 3 days later, when we docked at the Alliance station for repairs, I walked beside him through the corridors, and for the first time, I did not lower my eyes when others looked at us. I did not brace myself for whispers. Instead, I watched as officers who once sneered now nodded toward him with something close to respect, some even approaching to ask quiet questions about human tactics, human history, human minds. I had spent 3 years believing I carried a burden beside me. I walked away from that battle, understanding I had been standing beside my greatest advantage all along, and I had simply been too proud, too blind, and too afraid to see it.